Yes, you are now listening to the sound of sports reports as ordered. Dipset. And let me just be clear. We ain't gonna call you a nickname just because you got a nickname. Mac Jones. The only Mac we know is Craig Mac, Big Mac, and Little Mac from Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Getting Bill Belichick fired with your soft play. And my guy Bailey Zappi. But what you gonna get on sports reports is order. You gonna get the real. You ain't gonna get no mediocre. Because we coming to you in effect and we got our foot on everybody's necks. Out here in New Jerusalem.
You're
this cold ass weather.
Sorry, it's just windy.
You know, it's
crazy windy
weather. Yeah. So you know he in a foul mood. But he's still gonna keep it rational. Because he is. The Virginia even killed, just like Mike Tomlin, Mr. Logical.
You're in the building.
And down here in San Antonio, they talking about snow on Monday. Armageddon is here. And when the smoke clears, all you're going to see is cockroaches in 2-5. Because we will survive. So tonight, no getting off my chest. We just going to get straight into it. So, Mr. Logical, I heard some news.
It's a lot of news. A lot of rumors. Yeah. A lot of innuendo.
I heard that Dan Lanning and Mike Norvell are not going to Alabama. So that would mean that Nick Saban's not in Alabama. What?
Why did it go? Bah.
What?
Bah. Yo, it has to be a point where it's like, I think this whole narrative, a lot of times, guys want to go out on top. More likely you won't. Jerome Bettis, Peyton Manning, I think some other guys walked off their career with major championships, John Elway. But Terrell Davis was the engine of that team. The Broncos defense was the engine of that team. And Jerome Bettis fumbled in a couple of games earlier that would have ended their season. You know, it was a wrap for him, but he's, from Detroit. The game was at Ford Field, and it worked out for him. I don't know if there's enough money, if that's the thing that you say, I'm stable, I got enough money coming in, or if it's just a matter of I don't feel like wake up in the morning doing this. I don't feel like going from Tuscaloosa to some high school game in Florida to talk to this guy and his mom and his dad and his grandma about coming to Alabama. Maybe he just he can love it. He's maybe he's just sick of having to make those adjustments. And even with the comfort of it, it's man, I'm just 60 plus years old. What else does he have left to prove?
You know what Nick Saban is?
I'm listening.
He's the GOAT. You know what he's tired of? He's tired of not being able to cheat no more. You know what I'm saying? He was sitting up here talking about what Jimbo was doing. Like he wasn't sliding a little something under the table.
Listen, Eric Dickerson's mom got a loan for that Trans Am back in the day. So do all the players that went to all the Division I schools in the SEC.
You know what else Nick Saban did for real though? All jokes aside, you know what he did though? He transformed college football. He changed the game as we know it, and not just on the field. What he did off the field, as far as this dude had Super Bowl people that coached in the Super Bowl on his sideline as analysts. I was watching the Alabama game one year, and they were just doing like a span like around the stadium and everything. And they were like, yeah, there's Alabama football analyst Al Groh. I said, Al Groh, that was like a defensive coordinator at the Super Bowl? That was the head coach of Virginia? And there's Mario Cristobal. And there's Major Applewhite. And there's Mike Stoops, like Bob's little brother. There's Butch Jones. All these dudes. Major Applewhite. He had all these dudes as analysts on his sideline. He showed us that America and college football do forgive, because we saw when Lane Kiffin lost that game out in the desert and got left on the tarmac, and we thought it was over for him. He had the Raiders job. We was like, how did he get it? And he went to Tennessee. We were like, how did he get it? How the hell did he get USC? And he got left on the tarmac. And then Nick Saban said, come over here to my rehabilitation center. And now Lane Kiffin is a candidate for the job.
Lane Kiffin's going to be in the 12-team playoff next year.
That's correct. He might even beat Alabama next year if they play him, because they have the number one transfer portal class as of today. But also, there was a guy that we talk about sometimes offline, Mr. Sarkisian, who had some demons. He had some problems. Nothing, we ain't gonna get into it, but he had some issues.
He was fighting demons.
And then Nick Saban said, yo, come to my rehabilitation center. And now he's the head coach of Texas, just got done in the playoffs 2 weeks ago. And now he's a candidate for the Alabama job. Nick Saban changed recruiting. And I didn't even get to the part where, oh, by the way, he spawned this dude named Kirby Smart, who spawned another dude by the name of Dan Lanning, who is not going to take the Alabama job, it sounds like.
Yeah, he posted a map, Sean, where he was going to stay.
Yeah, so Nick Saban,
Oregon.
He did a lot of things that we didn't think could be done. Back in the 60s, 50s, earlier times, you had people like Bear Bryant that were dominating for decades on end, but they also had, I think it was 125 scholarships. They were just signing people so they wouldn't go to Auburn or go somewhere else, which is why Georgia Tech left the SEC, because they felt that Alabama wasn't playing fair. So as we fast forwarded to the 90s and early 2000s, we saw this guy show up at Michigan State with this defense. Like, we didn't know they played defense like that. Not at Iowa in the Big Ten. Then he came to LSU, a school that had never really amounted to anything prior to him arriving. They had won some national titles back when my granddaddy was defending the country with Drew Brees' granddaddy.
My grandfather was out there too.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But he did that.
We all had one.
And then he won a national title there. And then he came to Alabama and won 6 national titles in 12 years. And played in other championship games besides those. So you couldn't talk about national championship. You couldn't talk about BCS. You couldn't talk about playoff without Nick Saban. We used to call it the Alabama Invitational at one point. They made it every year except for last year. That's Nick Saban in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of skipped over his time in Miami in the NFL, but it happens. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
I often talked about the time I drove from Texas to Virginia, and I had to go through. I stayed a night in Tuscaloosa. There was no orange and blue throughout the entire city. Everything was burgundy. The buildings, the gas station. He has a Dr. Pepper advertisement because the colors match the Alabama uniforms. It just, I mean, he had such a profound effect on college football that I think he's so far ahead. Like, his accomplishments are so far ahead of everybody else's. I don't think you'll be able to catch him.
The love for Alabama made a dude go out here and poison some trees.
Straight up, and then called the radio station and told on himself.
The Feinbaum Show.
Feinbaum Show, the most popular SEC football program in the South, probably nationwide for that matter. How did he get through? I don't know what he said to get through.
I don't even know,
but you can call these radio stations and not get through. He must have said, yo, I poison them trees, and they're like, hold on, save that. We're gonna put you through.
And
Because
then my
like
favorite
it
part,
takes a lot to get through.
my favorite part was when he was done, and he just said, "Roll damn tide."
People
But
out there
yo,
crying over them trees. It was hilarious. But
you know what got me though? We always talk about how big and bad the SEC is. You know, the SEC won all these national titles in the last 20 years. This
true,
man
dude.
winning percentage in the SEC was 84.7.
So 10 games a year, you can book him for 8.5 wins. Over under 8. And you're like, yeah, I'll take the over. Out of 10 games, okay, I'm gonna take the over. Yeah, it was special, and you've seen a lot of behind the scenes stuff. I had an interview on with him earlier, playing on the TV. You have some highlights of him spazzing on sideline,
Yeah,
but everyone does. But he backs it up when he goes to the press conference, and if a reporter says something to one of his players, he'll immediately defend him,
right.
like immediately, boom. No, that was my call to call that play or go fair on 4th and 1, whatever the circumstance is. He's quick to stand up, defend his players, get them ready. Because if you think about it, like LSU with Joe Burrow under Ed Ogeron, everyone regards them as the greatest uh, college football team ever, and he was fired a year and a half after that. So to consistently from Marcel Darius hitting Colt McCoy in the back and hurting his shoulder and putting him out of the game to Ohio State beating them, but just every year coming back because Alabama didn't win it every year.
Right.
They just were always in the
There.
hunt every
Yeah.
single year. And when they didn't win it, they didn't implode. They didn't fire a bunch of people. They came back. They just reloaded. They were really the prime example of like, we're not rebuilding, we're reloading.
I love Ed
So
Ogeron. Roll Tide, fuck you.
yeah, but you see what happened? Now I think he's like a defensive coordinator for some other random college football team. When you
Yeah.
led the greatest college football team ever, you should, your name should be raised in infamy like Nick Saban. But most of these guys just don't match up.
So even I, as a Florida State fan, have to bow down because Bobby Bowden had 14 straight seasons where his team finished in the top 5 at the end of the season. Nick Saban at Alabama was number 1 in the polls at least 1 week of the last 15 years between 2008 and 2022. So not this year. Um, this year it broke the streak.
Yeah,
In his national title years, so the 6 times he won the national title at Alabama, 21-2 against top 10 opponents. Since 2008, 37-15 against top 10 opponents. Like, what can you say? And he also, while the rest of the world was trying to find the big, fast, no huddle offenses and he still maintained his defense even when he went and got Bryce Young, because that's what the greats do. They adapt. So he adapted, got Bryce Young, brought
went
in
four
Sarkeesian and
wide,
Kiffin, went 4
went
wide.
away from Eddie Lacy's and Mark Ingram's like
Yeah.
exclusively. He
Like
just
a lot of people probably can't even
Derrick
name.
Henry to he added guys like Derrick Henry to the 3 or 4 wide passing offense to Amari Cooper and Calvin Ridley, just getting a lot of wide receivers. I think because their uniforms are just so plain, it doesn't look as flashy on film. I mean, they're just wearing white pants and burgundy shirts.
I like it.
They look like the Remember the
I
Titans
mean, I don't
cast.
want to be that guy, but I would say the shirts are probably crimson.
Oh yeah, crimson tide. My bad. I used the wrong hue. Apologies. Let me get my pinky out. Uh, but like I said, I think they're just one of those teams. that always was ready to go, and he always had them locked in. Even the kick six, you know, a lot of plays like that to end your season or end your regular season or end a rivalry game. People are calling for your head. Like people want Ryan Day fired out of Ohio State. I'm pretty sure his top 10 win percentage is probably just as good as Nick Saban's, but his Ohio State win percentage isn't as good. Nick beat Auburn. He beat him, enough. It was close a few times, and then Cam Newton year, and then like I said, with the kick six, it's been some years where Auburn's got the best of them. But for the most part, you never went to that Auburn Alabama game, the Iron Bowl, feeling like, oh, Alabama's ill prepared for this team this year.
Right.
And because you never looked at the schedule and said, I think Alabama's going to be overwhelmed by whomever it is on the other side of the schedule. It just never happened. That's a testament to his ability to keep coaches, because we know when championships come, especially in the NFL, guys want to get paid. Guys want to get out. Guys want to get paid. Guys want to make sure they maximize, the iron strike. Strike while the iron's hot.
11
He will let
SEC
these.
titles.
He will let these coordinators go and just go get Lane Kiffin off the tarmac, or he would just get Sarkisian off the mat. Like, listen, man, come here, use that brain, be focused on something
Yeah,
positive.
so if I
Now he's head
remember
coach of Texas.
correctly, he got Sarkisian from the Falcons, right? Or was that after? Or did he go to the Falcons after?
He went to the Falcons, and then from the Falcons, he ended up at
To
Alabama. I'm not
Alabama,
sure what the
yeah.
timeline is, but he
Right.
was at Atlanta as the
Yeah.
offense coordinator before. But even then, it wasn't good. So his departure from there, granted, it wasn't a personal battle that he was fighting like he did when he
Right.
was prior to that, but it was a professional one. Like, do
Right.
you know what you're doing? He doesn't get the Texas job without his stint
No,
with
no,
Nick
not at all.
Saban and Alabama. So
And now him and Lane Kiffin are allegedly candidates. Now I could believe that Sark is a candidate, but I don't take Lane Kiffin as a serious candidate for Alabama.
I, I mean,
Like
if
he
I
just
had to
doesn't
pick
seem like an
one,
Alabama dude.
if I had to pick one or the other, oh, it's
I'm
just
going. I'm
tough.
going with the guy that got Arch.
That you think he's gonna stay? I got, I got Ole Miss. I think that Ole Miss has had that roller coaster when they win 6 games or when they win 9 and they win 7 and then they win 10,
Yeah.
and it's like up and down, and the expectations are always still hard even though like the records don't really support it.
Right.
I can see him taking an Alabama job. Like, listen, if I can make it work in LSU, because he's already at Tennessee, it's not like he has like some kind of SEC allegiance. So I can see Lane Kiffin. I think he's a splash hire, and I think he can recruit the South because he's literally in the same region, recruiting out of Mississippi, probably recruiting out of Atlanta, or recruiting out of New Orleans, recruiting out of Texas, recruiting out of Alabama, recruiting out of Georgia. So it's just a matter of, instead of trying to convince people to come to Oxford, Mississippi, they're just going to go to
Well,
Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
I don't know. I don't know. It just doesn't sound right. I guess we'll see. But
Well, it didn't sound right when he was offensive coordinator,
you
and
know,
then it was when it worked.
and then
I
I
think it
got,
fits.
I. So what do you do if you're Alabama, right? Like, do you go for an established name? Do you go for? Does it have to be someone contiguous to the South? Because according to
Yeah,
Joel
because
Klatt,
Brian Kelly's fake accent was egregious.
well, according to Joel Klatt, college football aficionado, he's running around saying that he would be shocked if it wasn't Kellen DeBoer out of Washington. So that would be a shock to me, if it was Kellen DeBoer, just because, coming from Washington, I don't know what his South game is like,
Yeah, you need a little Southern charm. You need to
know,
be able to say,
but
Meemaw, Grandma, Paw,
I've
like
seen
that.
lists,
That stuff needs to resonate with you if you're gonna try to
but
recruit
I've
from
seen
the South.
lists that had like Marcus Freeman on there and Deion Sanders. And the only reason I could see Marcus Freeman getting the job if he were to get it is just because he's probably a top 3 or 4 recruiter as a head coach in the country right now.
Okay, you talk about these lists. This is one I sent Mike about a couple hours ago. Lane Kiffin. This is like 5 candidates to watch for at Alabama.
Right.
Lane Kiffin, Dabo Sweeney, Steve Sarkisian, Mike Norvell, Kalen DeBoer. Now I get it. You want to put something out. These are some of the heaviest hitters currently with their university. None of these guys are on the outskirts. 2 of these guys finished the regular season undefeated,
Right.
and they're in great recruiting spots. I think Washington is probably one of the top Pacific Northwest schools. So I believe the battle for recruits is probably between them and Oregon, maybe
Right.
sprinkling to Oregon State, but for the most part, just kind of keeping that region, Hawaii, Northern California. I think Washington's got a shot. Like they literally just went 14-1. I just don't understand where these lists come from,
Just
and
people talking.
why Alabama would even why anybody on Alabama staff would think that these 5 guys are viable candidates.
Well,
Is
see,
beyond me.
and that's what I'm saying. Like, so would Alabama hire someone that's not a head coach right now? Because I look at somebody like Glenn Schumann, who is the defensive coordinator at Georgia, as a candidate, but I don't know if he meets the criteria of we want to splash or we got to have this big name, because Mike Norvell was on the list and I just don't take that seriously. It sounds like he already said that he's not going to take it. Kalen DeBoer, like I said, that would just surprise me. Sark would surprise me if he left Texas.
He would, because like I think he has something brewing there.
Yeah.
The Washington coach doesn't have his quarterback coming back.
Right.
So that could be enough. And then because they made it.
I got a sick thought for you.
I'm listening.
Let's just say Sarkisian does take the Alabama job.
He brings Arch Manning with him, yes.
And how sick is Peyton?
Peyton's going to cheer no matter what.
As a Tennessee guy, third Saturday in October, that would be sick. And Eli went to Ole Miss. That would just be
Eli
sick.
went to Ole Miss. But either way, Texas is going to the SEC, so they're going to beat up on them anyway, eventually.
Yeah.
I think Texas will be better consistently than Ole Miss and Tennessee.
All right, so you ready for our random ESPN moment?
Let's hear it.
On a level from 1 to 10, how shocked were you when you heard the news that Nick Saban retired?
I'm not going to front. I'm going to say 10.
Yeah?
I'm going to say 10 because normally you think a guy will retire. I wouldn't even call it abruptly, but in the context of how people normally retire and get out of it, it seemed abrupt. I was thinking that maybe he knew in that press conference when he said the statement. I wish I could have done a better job coaching them after the loss to Michigan.
Bingo.
But he was like, I'm not going to say anything until after the national championship. Because if he says it before, then it's like, he just wants a spotlight and takes it away.
Yeah, it would have been a LeBron moment.
So I think that's evident that he does really care about what he's doing.
Right.
But just chronologically, he's seen the pages of many calendars turn, and he's like, what else can he, like, he's like, what else can I prove? But I was legit shocked because his team started off poor. They grinded back, made it to the semifinals, and they're realistic. Like I said, that 4th and 2, if they cover that back out of the backfield, McCarthy has to check it to somebody else. You never know what happens. Now they're in a championship game with, against Washington, and he hoists another one and he retires, at the top of his game. But I was definitely shocked.
I think I was at about a 3 because listening to him all season, it reminded me of when I'm on deployments. And, when you're sitting up in the tent by yourself, laying on that small ass bed.
I love my twin size bed.
And you're like, Yo, all those times I be getting mad at her for asking all them questions. I just wish I could hear her voice right now. Like he just had that reflective, like that just kind of haze of like, yeah, like I wish we could have did this. And I think that, but it wasn't just after they lost to Michigan, like all season long, when you would talk to, I mean, he was laughing, he was telling jokes, talking about the gnat on the pig's ass and all that kind of stuff. Like,
He
like Nick,
was giving a lot of praise to other players, but I thought he was just kind of setting dominoes up to go get those guys for next year.
yeah, like Nick Saban is usually like a hard ass and talking about the rat poison and all this stuff like just mean, coming across like he's mean. And he just kind of sat back. It was like watching Kobe, like when Kobe got his show on Showtime, and you were like,
Yeah.
yo, Kobe's kind
Kobe
of funny.
smiling.
Yeah, but when you saw
Smiling,
him,
gained a little weight, grew his beard.
yeah, when you saw him on the court or heard people talk about him, it was always like, yo, he just sat in the corner and ain't talked to nobody.
It's
And
another
so,
guy we'll talk about later, and Bill Belichick. I'll
yeah,
use the example we talked about earlier. Yeah,
yeah.
I
So I
think it
felt,
might be one of those things where it's like, you remember when it's like when you decide you're going to retire?
yeah,
Like, did you care about roll call?
no,
Did you care about QA fails or like, well, not your probably not your office, but like PMR not getting done
I didn't care about
or
nothing.
guys
They were,
not logging? You're like,
yo,
I don't care. Like,
they were
I'm here to
literally
just
like,
tell you stories about my deployments. I'm here to tell you about what I'm going to do when I retire. I'm going to tell you about that time when I was an airman. That's what I spent my time. My latter year or so in the Air Force, when I was like in moments, it was all mentorship. I didn't care about whatever the process was. If you told me I had to go do some spot inspections, I didn't do a single one.
yeah,
I didn't even fake it. I didn't even fake it. I just didn't even sign the paper. Like I would do two in one night.
yeah. I did a
But if I
salve.
didn't do one, I wouldn't even like fake it. I was like, they can see it. And like, how can you do it last night? I'm like, because I'm
Yeah,
retiring. I don't care.
no, I did a salve,
I did
and
mentorship for 2 hours.
I think I had the squadron that I salved had like 3 write-ups, and they were like, so what do we need to do? And I was like, yo, people get write-ups every day, B. You
You
know,
be all right.
you be all
You
right.
be all
Yeah,
right.
like just what I'm saying, just fix it. Like you all right, like what I'm saying, and that's what it was. Like I felt like a father figure where instead of yelling at you, I was like, come here, son. Like, don't sign your name on nothing unless you're proud of it, and stuff like that.
Let me impart this wisdom on you because I'm out of here in 6 months.
Right. And so when I
Rutley
looked,
out. So like
so
you
when I
better
was
take these
listening to,
notes, record me, do something. But like Nick was probably like, yo, I'm out.
yeah, like
And he probably knew it for a while.
Nick was like, yo, Bill O'Brien told me I couldn't win with Jalen Milroe. I should have listened, and then, but then, like you brought it up, Bill Belichick, the other, I guess, GOAT, potentially, you know what I mean?
Definitively.
You know what I mean? Potentially. He,
Definitively. Ain't
I
nobody
said,
doing what Tom.
I
Nobody's
said what
doing
I
what Bill
said.
Belichick did. It's not a coach out there that could do what he did. Mainly two reasons. One, anyone who does that, and I know like I always bang on quarterback MVP talk, but you gotta need a quarterback that's upper echelon. But that guy might get paid more than like his I won't say his value, but he might get overpaid and it's going to cost you places. I think Tom Brady, rumor has it, spent a few contract negotiations getting team friendly deals in an
Uh,
era where everyone wasn't getting crazy money. Like the rookies, Sam Bradford, Cam Newton, I think Matthew Stafford, Jamarcus Russell, those are the four names that popped in my head. It was like number one draft pick quarterbacks. They got like $50 million and it was crazy. But for the most part, it was pretty balanced and pretty level. So now quarterbacks are getting ridiculous money. Dak is probably going to get like $55 million next year.
all right,
55 per,
you
57
ready for
per.
your first quiz of the day?
Yeah,
So Bill Belichick obviously has the record, 31 playoff wins. Who's second place?
Chuck Noll with 14.
No and no.
Okay.
Second place, you ready for this? the one and only head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs.
That was easy guess. Andy Reid.
Yeah, at 22. So he has the record for playoff wins by 9. He's 15 wins away from the all-time winning record. So the only negative marks on his career are Spygate and
which I think people essentially forgotten about because it's no different.
I ain't forget about it. Rob Parker ain't forget about it.
It's no like this. If you were recording like the walkthrough before the game, but everything else you can equate to just film. Like I could just watch regular film and steal your signs. If you were still in playbooks and filming people clandestinely from hotel lobbies,
or if you had a dude flying to the stadium, sitting in the crowd and filming you play against,
yeah, that dude was at the Rose Bowl.
I know, but the other mark on his career is the 84 and 103 record without Tom Brady. I don't care about it that way, but I know some people do. I understand how football works. It's hard to win. You can't, just like any sport, you look at like the NBA, right? You look at Greg Popovich. What did he have? Oh, Tim Duncan, Phil Jackson had who? Red Auerbach had who? So when you look at the NFL or whatever, Bill Walsh had who?
You need stars. You need
Bill
stars.
Parcells had who?
You need stars. Granted, we'll look at the win-loss record of the stars, but you gotta look at let's look at a coach like Pete Carroll. His win-loss record without Russell Wilson probably wasn't great. But you can tell, like, once he gets his good quarterback who can make plays and decisions and keep his game plan moving, he'll do all right. Because we can see how quickly these coaches get fired. A lot of coaches finish their career with, finish their time before they get fired with a sub 500 record. Right. We'll talk about another guy like, I think Frank Reich's record sub 500, Arthur Smith's sub 500, Josh McDaniels, I believe, is sub 500. So even to be anywhere near 500 and then subsequently also be that good in the playoffs, because Tony Dungy had Peyton Manning. Still took Peyton Manning like 5 seasons to get his first playoff victory.
Yeah.
Eli Manning was not that good of a regular season quarterback. Had 2 great, postseason runs.
Led the league in interceptions 3 times.
And they end up with 2 Super Bowl rings, 2 Super Bowl MVPs. But to consistently be the best coach. We talk about Sean Payton all the time, it targeted a lot of my aggression. We talk about those years he went 5-11 with Drew Brees. Drew Brees is an all-time great quarterback. I think his numbers statistically are right behind Tom Brady.
John Gruden
took Tony Dungy's team, won a Super Bowl, and then just rode the rest of his time out strictly off of personality.
Yeah.
So you're going to be, most coaches are probably going to be around 500 or sub 500 with the team that they're coaching until they get the quarterback position figured out, or like the defensive group filled out. Yeah.
So on a scale from 1 to 10, how shocked were you when you heard that Bill Belichick was not the Patriots coach anymore?
Less shocked. I'm gonna say 6. That's 5 because realistically, based off of coaching performance since the 2020 season, he deserved scrutiny and the potential to have his job status altered. Not necessarily be fired, but hey, we're going to take the GM responsibility from you. We're going to take away, you get last say. Because what coach? I can't remember what coach it was. But one of the stipulations in his contract was that on draft day, he was given like the final call. Everyone was allowed to make the input, but it was like written in his contract that he can say yay or nay to 2 options, whatever the case may be. I'm pretty sure Belichick had that same thing as a GM.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was a situation where he was going to have to either give up some of that stuff.
I guess that's the other mark on his career. It's his GM hood.
Yeah, he didn't do great. But a lot of that stuff is hindsight 2020. Like we talk about, like 7 guys went before DK Metcalf. And people could talk about the out loud, like, Tom Brady went 199. Yes, that is a crazy story. But
Brock Purdy.
Brock Purdy was, Mr. Irrelevant. So
he traded a second-round pick for Mohamed Sanu.
Well, they're great negotiators, Charlie. They talk fast like T.I. You can't understand what they're talking about.
He picked up Chad Jackson. And I know, like you said, it's hindsight, but just one of those things. He picked up Chad Jackson in the second round. Greg Jennings went 16 picks later. Brandon Marshall went 2 rounds later. It's just wild.
It's a crapshoot.
But this is the problem, though. Like, it is a crapshoot. But the problem is when you have more of those than the other thing. Like, it is a crapshoot. But you got to win sometimes.
But what he started doing essentially after that was, well, I don't pick cornerbacks well. I don't pick linebackers well. I'm going to just take your guy that's due a contract that I've seen play for 2 years, 3 years, and I'm going to sign him, and I'm going to give him a 3 or 4 year deal because I know I watched Stephon Gilmore play defense. I watched Darrelle Revis. I watched Browner. I watched who else is on there? Another big corner. Cromartie wasn't a Patriot, I believe. But Browner was the reason that they beat Seattle because he was like, you know what? I got this big corner. He jammed number 15 for the Seahawks, Jeremy something. He's the one that caught the touchdown in the NFC Championship. Jermaine Kearse, yeah.
Yeah.
So Browner jammed him up to the point where Malcolm Butler was able to cut behind him and make the interception of the Russell Wilson pass. So just those kinds of things worked out. The only reason we evaluated the draft picks was because he wasn't also still winning games.
Right.
It's the whole buzzer beater conundrum. If you lose a game by 1 point and you took a last-second shot, you'll evaluate the shot, the play call, who didn't set a hard enough screen, did you shoot the ball too early, did you shoot it too late, where you rushed, versus that person hitting the buzzer beater and everyone's elated.
It's all good. Yeah.
You're not, I don't think you're doing the same kind of deep dive because you're not looking at who missed the screen or who didn't hit the right pin down or who wasn't in position to box out for a potential rebound and put back because the ball went in.
Right.
I think that was the thing with the Patriots is like he messed up some draft picks. They weren't all hits, but he ended up with Hall of Fame defensive lineman, Hall of Fame offensive lineman, Hall of Fame corners, Hall of Fame quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Julian Edelman, not Hall of Fame, but you got a 7th-round quarterback out of Kent State that you made into a Super Bowl MVP.
One of the best postseason receivers.
One of the best postseason. So it's like I said, we can all talk about their record, but if you took every quarterback, every coach that coached before, got a dynamic quarterback, and then coach after, most of them be pretty close. Maybe except for Andy Reid, but he had Donovan McNabb.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had a great offensive system, so he can kind of fill. He had Alex Smith in there getting 10, 11 wins back in the 16 games.
And if you even want to bang on him, he still made the playoffs with McCorkle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
he beat the Bills with McCorkle throwing 3 passes.
Yep, Monday Night Football.
In Buffalo.
I was shocked as well, but not really. It was one of those things where I had already convinced myself that it was going to happen. But
I was shocked to open my phone and see it.
Right. It was just like it was that realization.
It was warranted. It was warranted for him not to have that employment anymore. But it just was a shock because you sent me like 4 things back to back over the last like 24 hours. And each one I was like, what? And I'm like, I was drinking whiskey last night. So like, I'm like,
I think Pete Carroll was the one that surprised me. That was the one. I knew he was older, but from watching him, like Belichick, you can't tell. He just has that gruff, like always.
Pete Carroll's older than Bill Belichick.
No, I know, but Belichick's got the resting bitch face. You know what I mean? Whereas like Pete Carroll is still energetic. I don't know what he got against that gum. You know what I'm saying? He be chewing that gum like it stole something.
He be chewing like it's a fight.
Yeah, and So when I heard about him stepping down or get whatever it happened, it was just like this is a changing of the guard of the in the NFL because that was before Belichick. It's like, yo, this is a changing of the guard, you know. So as I was looking at it, like I was like, Dan Quinn, this might be your job.
Not in Seattle. I don't like that. I don't like that move because it's the same thing with Vrabel in
New
New
England.
England. But hold on, I'm watching the Lakers game and somebody just got banged on. Jackson Hayes got dunked on by who's number 2?
Oh, I'm watching it now. Yeah,
Yeah, it's not.
that's,
It's not as cool
that's
of a
Okogie, ain't
poster.
it?
Yeah, if you fall down, that was a foul. Yeah, I'll take that.
I mean, like
So yeah,
it probably wasn't the greatest dunk ever, like LeBron's though.
calm down. Dunk of the century. That's
Dunk,
the
oh,
term we're
dunk of the
using. Dunk
century.
of
It
the
wasn't
century.
the.
Yeah. But yeah. So Pete Carroll, it did catch me off guard, mainly because they were a tiebreak away from being in the playoffs.
Right.
So and that's what I mean. So
And
if
with
they would have
Gino
won,
missing some games too.
if they would, that's a terrible call. If they would have won, if they would have, the tiebreaker would have worked out in their favor. They're in the playoffs. Do you fire him this week with the same team? The results are in.
I mean, after they
It-
get blown out by Dallas, you
that's what I'm
probably
saying. So it's
yeah.
like they're a play. Their record was good enough to make the playoffs. Just unfortunate tie breaks didn't work in their favor. So if he would have made the playoffs with that record, like if they would have ended the playoffs this week,
Yeah.
they wouldn't have fired him. Considering like all this stuff that happened this season, it's still the same. The only difference is the tiebreak worked in their favor Sunday night, and they would have been in the playoffs. I don't know if they fired him on Tuesday or Wednesday of the week that they're
Mm-hmm.
playing. So it's like I don't know how you get to the point where you find them, unless you're just basically saying we need to start over. We need somebody in the 41 to 45 range that
Mm-hmm.
could potentially give us a 5 or 6 year contract and not be damn near 80 when the contract ends.
You know what's crazy is that I didn't realize how. Here's a word for you. I didn't realize how downtrodden of a franchise Seattle was. Right, like as I was looking at this. Now I know that before he got there, they had made one previous Super Bowl that they got cheated out of against the Steelers.
Was a dude
And
named Craig from Notre Dame, the war number 3, the
um
quarterback
Golden you talking about the quarterback.
from
David
like the
Craig
eight. Dave
from
was
the
it David?
80s.
Yeah, war number 3.
Yeah, I think David Craig. There was
I think Rick Meyer might have been the
Rick
quarterback
Meyer was a
there for a
quarterback for
while.
them. Yeah.
They had Steve Largent and Brian Bosworth. Those were that was
I was
their
thinking about
legacy.
Steve DeBerg. That's why I stopped for a
I
second.
think Steve DeBerg, I think he had a nice little run maybe in Kansas City.
Yeah, he was with Kansas
Maybe out
City,
there
but
too.
I feel like he went to Seattle at one, but I don't know. But anyway, but what got me was, they had made the Super Bowl with Mike Holmgren, got screwed by the Steelers, but in their franchise history, they have 17 playoff wins total. Pete Carroll has 10 of them. They have 13 10-win seasons in their franchise history. Pete Carroll has 8 of them. So this is Belichick on a lesser scale, I would think, because Seattle became Pete Carroll. Like at one point, his personality was the Seattle Seahawks and the Legion of Boom, and or did they go to 3 Super Bowls in a row? Or no, I think it was 2.
2 in
They
a
beat
row. They
they
beat
beat
they
Denver,
beat
lost to the
Denver. That's the
Patriots.
game we watched over at Big Mike's house.
Yeah, and then
And
they
then they
lost.
lost. They lost to the Patriots. So I was here for that game.
Right.
I was one of the Super Bowls. I don't know
No,
if I
I know
had
what I'm
homework
thinking
or
about.
something.
I know what I'm thinking about. I was thinking about Aaron Rodgers because the onside kick. That
That
was the
was the
second year when they lost to the Patriots.
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That was tough to watch. And I was telling someone about this the other day. You know how sometimes we watch our stream and you're a couple seconds ahead of me.
Yeah.
I was on the phone with my dad. He's watching on TV. I'm streaming it. The touchdown happens. He goes, "Oh, touchdown!" Before the ball got snapped on the what I was watching. And I think it might have been cable. I think it just was a different signal.
Yeah.
But he said touchdown before the ball was snapped on my TV, and I was like, so that's one thing I remember about that. Um, Once again, I'm gonna give what's the boy name Pete Carroll the same like olive branch I gave to Bill. It takes a lot to coach an NFL game where you don't have all the firepower you need, all the levels for your system to work.
Right.
But once he had it all, it worked. And I talked about this before on the show when we talk about like guys like Philip Rivers or you know Jalen Hurts or Kansas City, Josh Allen. Recently, we talked about it with Peyton Manning. We talked about every year you will not have a championship team. I talked about it the last episode with basketball. I was like, you got 5 or 6 teams that really have a championship team built around them. So you're not going. I don't expect. I didn't expect the Houston Texans. Granted, they made the playoffs, but I don't have the same expectations for them as I did for the Dolphins with the speed they have on offense that I have for the Kansas City Chiefs with their pedigree. So you have an opportunity to just play, get better, and continually progress. And I think Pete Carroll always did that. And then when he got Russell Wilson, okay, keep in mind they had Matt Flynn. They signed him to a big contract. They got
Mm-hmm.
Russell in like late in the third round. And then
Yep.
in training camp, they were like, well, I know we're paying this one guy, but this young guy that we're paying $700,000 a year to is outshining him through mini camp, training camp, and now preseason. So we're going to go with him. It's the same thing that Belichick did. I was thinking about this early because, like, before I knew we were going to record, I think of conversation I'm going to have with you. Think about if they called the tuck rule play a fumble and the Patriots season ends right there in the snow. Drew Bledsoe was the highest paid quarterback in the league. He goes into the following season as a starter
Mm-hmm.
if Tom doesn't win a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So now Drew Bledsoe's career didn't span many years after that. I think he ended up at Dallas for a while, and then he got benched
Mm-hmm.
for Romo, and that was pretty much the end of his career. Now he's up in Washington making wine. But it's not a knock on Bledsoe. It's just a matter of making that stand with Tom Brady, that rule being overturned, getting to the Super Bowl, beating the greatest show on turf. It gave him what 18 seasons with Tom Brady, and then Tom played like 2 or 3 more with Tampa Bay. So he got off of that 1 year where he could have got nothing. Like think about it. If they call that a fumble, he doesn't get 18
Which
years
it
per
was.
per the rule. I still don't understand it. Like I never really like looked into it, but I still don't really understand how it's not a fumble. But someone explained it, and they made the announcement, and then Tom Brady went on to win 7 Super Bowls. But it was a situation where if that play isn't called the way it is, he doesn't get the 18. If before even that, if Drew Bledsoe doesn't slow up on the sideline, if Drew Bledsoe just jogs out of bounds and doesn't get hit, Tom Brady
Everything's
never comes in
different.
the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I said, we can look. That's a hypothetical, but if we just look at that play, that the tuck rule play. If that's called a fumble, you don't get 18 years of time and Bill. You don't get 6 Super Bowls. You don't get at was that 8 Super Bowl appearances? 8, yeah, not nine,
Nine. Nine.
9. So he went
Six and
six and
three.
three, and then he
Mm-hmm.
went 1-0 with Tampa Bay. Talking about Tom Brady. So 14 AFC Championship games. That's a lot. I think it takes a lot to keep that kind of marriage together because everyone wants credit. Everyone
And a
wants to
lot
be
of
like,
them were
yo,
at home too.
a lot of them at home, a lot of first round buys. They dominated the division. We saw Miami have a lead in the division December 1st and then essentially get dominated and lose out on the division. You
I
think
told
you
you.
think New England? You think New England in 2012 is letting Buffalo beat them twice in 1 year, let alone at home to win the division? There's no way.
Nope. Nope. And I
So
told you Buffalo was coming. And then my guy Mike Vrabel, you know what I mean, out of Tennessee. We were talking about that for a few months.
come on, Mike. Come on,
We were
Mike.
talking
Atlanta's
about it.
good. I heard it's dope.
We were
Big
talking about it for
airport.
a few months, and we were wondering if Tennessee could or would actually do it. There were times where I knew it was going to happen. There were times that I didn't think, like, they ain't going to fire him. All the way down to the wire. Basically, he knocked Jacksonville out the playoffs. And it was like, they got to keep him, right? And it was like, no, they don't.
You would. We talk about this a lot. Like you're a stat guy. I've kind of like. I think I've kind of pegged myself the relationship guy of the show. Like you give the numbers, I kind of give the
The love
breakdown.
doctor.
Just like the psychoanalytical guy. This is what I do. It's just it's a gift. We all don't have it. But we talked about how in Tennessee for the last couple of years, it didn't feel as if Vrabel was really consulted on decisions. It felt a lot of times as if other people were making decisions and he was left, to pick up on what was going on. I could tell by his tone. I could be wrong, but I'm just guessing. I don't think he was a big fan of drafting Malik Willis because he probably was like, I don't need another project at quarterback. I have Tannehill. Tannehill's already kind of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Why would you bring in
Because
another
he's a wide
guy?
receiver.
Tannehill has some good. He has some good runs in him. Like I said, it was 4 or 5 teams that have been like Minnesota have been like, please, when that Achilles popped for Kirk Cousins, they would have gladly taken a stable Tannehill that would have given you 17 touchdowns and 9 picks over the last seven
Hey,
or
they could
eight
have
weeks.
traded for him instead of Dobbs.
But Tennessee wasn't going to give that up because Tennessee had Malik Willis and Will Levis. So it just was like one of those situations where I think he was probably good with Tannehill and didn't want the quarter. Because now, if you don't give me a player that I don't want, and you're gonna make me play him, that's why he only threw 16 passes that game with Patrick Mahomes threw 63, and he pulled him out of a preseason game because he wouldn't throw the ball. He was like, "I don't need you to run. I need you to throw the ball. You're a quarterback." It just felt as if the control, not even the control, but just like the respect for what he wanted his management to do for him. They said they asked Will Levis, like, what you and Mike talk about, and he said something along the lines. I'm paraphrasing here. He said to come back to him in a couple of days, when things kind of get figured out. And that was Sunday after the game because he must have felt like this is it for me.
You think that when he was talking to the owner and the owner told him that they were going to relieve him, you think he looked at the GM and said, "Did you tell him that I didn't want Will Levis? Did you tell him, you bitch?"
Hit him with the Stephen A.
Yeah.
Honestly, the I think the beauty part about Mike Vrabel is that when you look at the market, he's hot. He's the prom date you want.
I even heard him on the Alabama list.
I don't know if he's a college guy,
I heard
but
Dan
as far
Quinn
as
too.
NFL, he can go.
He
You
could
can
go
put him
right
in.
here,
You could put him in Seattle, and he
right
can just
here.
get a good offensive coordinator. You could put him in with the Commanders. Easy fill in because it's Tennessee from Steve McNair, and then it was a huge gap, and
Yes.
then it was Tannehill and Vrabel. It was like Steve McNair, Eddie George, and then it was a huge gap from the Miracle at
The
was it
Miracle of Music City or Music City
musical music
Miracle.
Music City Miracle?
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot, Then they had that Super Bowl run. That was pretty much that was their run for a while. They were just an entertaining team and up and coming,
Man, those games they used to play against
Dixie,
the Ravens
Macy
back then.
Dixieline City. Yeah. So the Ray Lewis and the Ed Reed games. So they were pretty much locked in to being a pretty successful team. And
Right.
they kept drafting quarterbacks. They didn't pay Derrick Henry. It just felt as if the new guy came in and wanted to imprint his own thing. And I give a quick military story. I had a guy we were both retraining as a tech. I was retrained as a tech sergeant, and we were talking about changes and people coming in and kind of like just doing whatever. And he said he talked to this captain when he came in, and he's like, "I wait 90 days. I wait 90 days to see how the processes are, what works, what doesn't." And then if something works after 90 days and I completely understand why you do it, we leave it. But if it doesn't work, I'll explain like, hey, over the last 3 months, I've watched this process and these are the flaws I have with it. I think the Titans GM did that. I think he gave it this year. I think he was like, let me see if this works.
He ought to fire himself for trading AJ Brown.
I don't think this guy, no, this guy's
Oh no,
new.
no,
He
no, this is
traded
the new guy. This is the
This is
new
a new
guy.
guy. This is the guy they got from San
Yeah,
Francisco.
the
That's what I'm
guy
saying.
they,
So
they
I think
fired the guy that got rid of
they
AJ
fired
Brown,
the
as
guy.
they should have.
The AJ Brown trade would have not been that bad because it gave them 2 first-round picks. They just whiffed on them
Right.
because if you're Philly, it's like, oh, we just traded AJ Brown for a first-round pick. That's the kind of talent you want to get out of the first round anyway.
Right.
So if I can trade you this first-round pick for a guy I know that's an optimal talent, like for instance, if you were who's probably hot right now? Okay, we'll use Justin Fields as an example before we, go too far. If you are a team like, you're drafting 25, 24,
Right.
25, and straight up you can just trade your first round pick and maybe some compensatory picks for Justin Fields. Essentially, you look at it like I traded a first round pick for a first round quarterback who just wasn't like the team just wasn't happy with him because they have another shiny penny coming in. I think that's the deal that he got in Tennessee with that trade. AJ Brown's done a couple of interviews. He's the one on the Raw Room, essentially saying he wanted to stay in
Right.
Tennessee because he has a daughter and he wanted to be close. And the conversations that he was having was making him think it was gonna get done, but also at the same time thinking like it might not get done. Like that uneasy feeling,
Yeah.
and it didn't work out. But I praise the GM. I applaud him for giving it a year. But Mike Vrabel, if I'm the Chargers, I'm calling. I want to talk. I'm talking to his agent to find out when I can speak to Mike. If I'm Washington, I'm calling. If I'm Atlanta, I'm calling.
Well,
Uh,
you might have to wait though.
all you gotta do is call.
No, you might have to wait though
For who?
to see what happens with Sean McDermott or Mike McCarthy.
I am not going to Dallas if I'm Vrabel, and I'm not going to Buffalo. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go to Buffalo if they lose because your quarterback is already eating 265 of your. He has 265 guaranteed over the next. I think it's his first year of extension, so you can't even put your stamp on the team because you're kind of handicapped with the quarterback taking up 40% of your cap.
Herbert got some money.
I don't think it kicked in yet, though. You know how
They
those
still,
extensions work.
but they still in cap trouble because I'm thinking that they're going to have to cut
You can move Bosa, you
Keenan
can move
Allen or
Mac.
Mac. Yeah.
Yeah, you can move them and make some pieces before your quarterback 40% kicks in. Because if I can move Khalil Mack and I say I draft a kid in the second, third round, that turns out to be a 9-sack guy. I move Bosa in a trade, maybe get a couple of thirds, a second, whatever the case may be, and I get some more pieces there. You build, and then I think next year Herbert's contract kicks in. Well, I got some young guys that are out here getting, they're doing their thing. I'm getting 9 sacks out of them. I'm getting pass deflections, like what Seattle ended up with ultimately with these 2 young corners the rookie corner. I think he lead the league last year in interceptions. I don't know if he led the league, but he was high. He was
He
like
was
5
up
or
there.
6.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
he was
definitely up
up there. Yeah, and it was like so you get something like that flowing, and you're in a place that's warm, so it won't be physically frustrating. Sometimes you remember those nights at Hill when it's just like so cold, you don't even
I
want to go shop.
remember I remember there was always one day every year in the winter where the wind would just blow for like,
Blow through the valley and rip people's
yeah,
shingles and stuff
like
off.
the FedEx trucks were flipped over and the trash
Yo,
cans were flying everywhere.
one time I rake leaves right on like a Tuesday night, rake Tuesday, Wednesday night, rake leaves, and the sun went down. I'm like, all right, I did it after work. I'm like, I'll bag these up tomorrow.
Right.
The wind came through the next day. My yard was clear. Every leaf that I had raked up was down the street. My yard was
Yeah.
immaculate because of the wind when it whipped through the valley when it came
Yeah.
out like Ogden
But it
Canyon.
was always just for like one day.
It was always one day. My trash can was across the street in my neighbor's driveway though.
Yeah.
It was like 3 houses down in their driveway. I had to walk down and bring it back. But that's how hard the wind was blowing. But when you're in LA, you're probably not gonna get that. You're probably gonna have
Right.
good weather. You're probably gonna be able to land uh, some good free agents because it's gonna be space. There's gonna be space and opportunity in LA. I'm not going to New England. I'm not touching New England at all because the expectation will be because I heard this yesterday a couple of times. I believe it was on First Things First, and they were talking about coaching trees. The Shanahan coaching tree, the Andy Reid coaching tree, the Dundee coaching tree. And they were talking about why it was a good reason. Oh, good pass, LeBron. Why it was a good reason for Vrabel to go because he's off of the Belichick tree. And someone was like, no, 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 no. He played for
He
Belichick.
played for Belichick.
He's not a coach of the tree. And then somebody else said it again, and they made the same mistake saying tree. And the
Oh,
guy, I think it was like, had to correct them again. They were like, no, 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 no. He's not off the coaching tree.
speaking
Coupled
of
with the
which,
fact you don't want to follow the legend. You don't want to be the guy that follows the legend. You want to be the guy who followed the legend. You want to be that guy.
speaking of which, according to Styrofoam Ralph of the Hot Box, I had a
Straight
little
up.
conversation with them today. Shout out to those guys: El Residente, Dallas, Mike, Rowe, Jay Lethal. You know, according to him, because he's Patriot fan extraordinaire. He's been hearing that the answer at head coach might be Mayo.
That was on the staff
Uh huh.
because you can fire him.
Easily.
You can get this guy. It's like playing chess. I'm not calling this guy a pawn, but you put someone out there with no head coaching experience, and then he goes 1.5, 2 years, and you accumulate a couple more draft picks because you're not that good of a team. And I'm not saying he can't coach. It
It just
if you're
isn't
gonna
likely.
yeah, if you're gonna keep a guy that learned under your previous guy's tutelage, you're gonna get the same result. Like if my son was sitting here taking notes on this podcast, and then I said I don't want to do it anymore, and he sat down, and then your son sat down because he
It
learned
would
from you,
imitate us.
it'll sound a lot like the way we do it. They might try to do some different things, but essentially, like what you learned, what you absorbed for a year or two sitting here watching us do this, it's going to look and sound pretty much the same, with maybe a little nuance here, a little minutia here and there. But for the most part, it's
Right.
going to sound exactly the same.
Right.
So, Gerard Mayo, I know one of Bill Belichick's thing was big linebackers. He wanted big, heavy hitting linebackers. He didn't really care about the hybrid guys, like the guys that Dallas has, the guys that San Francisco has, the guys that Cleveland have, where you have these guys who could have been safeties, 15 more pounds, you make them hybrid linebackers. A guy like Lamade Aluakan, Foye Aluakan, out of he was in Atlanta Knights in Jacksonville. He wears 23, so he looks like a safety, but he's a linebacker, but he flows side to side with ease. New England linebackers were just big bodies, Rabel and Crudy. So it was a lot of guys like that. Brewski. Brewski wasn't covering anybody in space.
Yeah.
River wasn't covering tight ends on seam routes. Like that's just not what they did. So if I were to bring this kind of coach in, he's gonna essentially potentially, have the same kind of philosophy. I don't know if Bill retires though. I don't know if he just.
Nah, I think he's too close to the wins record.
But is that wins record? That's 2 more years. And
That's fine.
say he gets it. He gets 15 wins, right?
Right.
How many games there? There'll be 34 games. So going 15 and 19 over the next 2 years is like sufficient to like be like, hey, I have the best record. But you're sub 500 for
Yeah, because
4 years in a row.
Yeah, because I mean, he's not sitting there saying to himself, "I'm going to go 15 and 19." You know what I mean? He's sitting there saying, "Fresh start, build this culture, and we go 7 and 10 this year. Next year, we're 10 wins." That's the way these people think.
Yeah, but even with that, it's like, is that worth it? Is it worth what are we looking at? March, the season. So season ends for most teams sometime in January. If you don't take a break, which I imagine he doesn't, now you're ramping it up in March when the new year starts for the league. The
Right.
draft is April, May.
April 25th.
Rookie camp, mini camp, preseason, regular season. Are those 20 months that you have to do over the 24-month window? Is that worth it just to say I got more wins than Don Shula, who
It
no one
depends.
knows? It's not a number. It's not like 714 with Babe Ruth. I mean, so that number, it doesn't like resonate in the halls
I think it
of
just depends. Like if he still likes to
NFL
teach,
lore.
if he still likes to teach, if he still likes to coach defense, then yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I talked to you earlier about him being super excited about watching Ed Reed, and he was on that. I think it was like NFL 100 or NFL All Time, one of like some kind of NFL Network special where it was him, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, one of the moderators from NFL Network, and another person they're sitting like a big table, like it was like a illuminated table. They're just having a conversation, and he talked about Ed Reed and his excitement, talking about how Ed Reed made like the greatest plays he's ever seen a free safety make. But really, all he did was like he just fooled Peyton Manning, but he's supposed to like break to the middle of the field to cover
That's
the
hard
other
to
side,
do.
and then he just spun around back to the quarterback, got the interception. He's like, still one of the greatest plays I've ever seen a free safety make.
I'm sorry, y'all.
That
These
was Bill
allergies kicking
Belichick.
my ass.
Yeah, you can fight through it. We good. You tough. You've been to war. That's Bill Belichick's talking about Ed Reed. So maybe he gets into that space to where he just talks football. He does the whole John Gruden thing, and just has, I
Maybe.
don't know if he has the personality to have like the QB room and with the whiteboard like John Gruden does. Spider Z, XY, banana, whatever that play's called that he kept
Or he
making
could teach
everybody
us
run.
about he could teach us the intricacies of like this
Cover
is why
four
this cover four
quarters,
didn't
cover
work. Yeah.
three, cover two. This is why this doesn't work. I think it'd be dope, but if that's enough, I think that'd be dope. But
Yeah.
I know they're talking about Bill to Atlanta. I saw that a couple times. I
Yeah,
don't know how
Atlanta
that
wants him
works.
really bad, apparently. You know what I'm saying? Hey, you
If
know
he's
what?
got 4 or 5 years of coaching in him, then I'll take it. But if he
Yeah,
doesn't,
that's
give me
life though,
Vrabel at
right?
48.
That's life though, right? You fall in love with your abuser.
It was one game.
It
It wasn't like Peyton. Peyton was
wasn't
getting
one
beat.
game, it was a Super Bowl.
It was
Matt
one
Matt
game.
Ryan lost 3 games that day.
Well, he still won an MVP.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's
He has
what
the
he
same
wanted.
number of
I'm
MVPs
sure
in
that's
his
what he
league as
wanted.
Shaq.
I'm sure that's what he wanted. But hey, like while we talking about all this football, we might as well get into these playoffs. You know what I'm saying? So we gonna take it from the top. Houston hosting Cleveland. Go.
Houston. I got Houston. I think the coach, rookie quarterback, rookie coach combo. You're gonna hear me talk a lot about like the mentality and like the mental aspect of it, and teams like being on the same page. I just believe that going into the fourth quarter down 17-10 or 14-10, and the defensive struggle, 6 minutes left, Houston gets the ball. I think CJ Stroud can look in the eyes of the men in the huddle, and they'll look at him and like, this guy's going to drive us 80 yards, and I think they'll believe it, and you'll see it, and you'll see the plays, you'll see the 3rd and 8 conversions, you'll see the things you need to see out of them because they don't know any better. We had them going 3-14, 4-13. They went 10-7, won their division with a rookie coach, a rookie quarterback that went second to a guy, and there was people saying that CJ Stroud was going to go 12th.
And his specialty, D'Amico Ryan's specialty, wasn't even that great.
They just played. I think they just believe CJ's going to give me this ball if I get open, if I'm a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And the defense is like, if we hold him to a field goal, CJ's going to get us a touchdown. We're going to win.
You ready for your 2-5 moment?
Oh, you got one. Come on, hit me with it.
I got a bunch of them, as you can see right here.
Rapid fire. Let's go.
All right. So, what was my criticism of one Dak Prescott this season?
He didn't win against teams that have winning records.
No. Remember his splits? How he played
at home on the road.
Yeah, there you go. So this was as of 2 weeks ago. This is before the game where the starter sat. I didn't want to include those stats in this. Cleveland at home gives up 13.1 points per game. On the road, they give up 30.7.
What?
At home, they get
Hold on. Wait, stop. Hold on. You can't hit me with that and just kind of skip over it.
You told me rapid fire.
They give up 13 points at home and 30 on the road?
Yes. At home, they average 3.6 sacks a game. On the road, 1.8, so half. Rushing or passing yards at home, they give up 135.5 passing yards. On the road, 236.2. Completion percentage is 6 points higher on the road when they're on the road. Rushing yards at home, they give up 87.4. Away, 122. Give me the Texans. But that's not the only reason I'm taking.
So you said all that to say I'm taking Cleveland on the road.
No, I'm taking Texans. I'm taking the Texans.
I would have logged off if you would pick Cleveland after you read off those stats.
But that's not even the reason I'm going to pick Cleveland. I mean, I'm going to pick Houston. I'm going to pick Houston because their quarterback doesn't give the ball away. So CJ Stroud, 5 interceptions over 15 games. Joe Flacco, 8 interceptions over how many games he played. I think he played 6.
In those 5 interceptions for CJ, he had 1. Then he had a game where he got his second one. And then he had a game where he had 3.
Yeah.
And he hadn't had any since.
So the Browns are 3-5 on the road this season, as you could imagine with some of those stats that I ran down. That does include the game against Cincinnati last week. That does include a win at Baltimore. I just think that if this was Joe Flacco, say 6 years ago, I would probably pick Cleveland because I saw the stat today going around that he's never lost a wild card game. But
he hasn't played one since 2016?
Yeah, first time for everything. So then we take it up to Orchard Park. Lake Erie going crazy. They talking about 25 to 30 mile an hour winds, could get up to 50 at parts of the game. So it's going to be a little ugly. So I know you like to do this thing where you're like, I don't know why I pick against Mike Tomlin. So are you picking against Mike Tomlin right now?
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I mean, JJ Watt's not playing, or excuse me, TJ Watt's not playing. JJ
Yeah,
Watt's
you're
not
right.
playing.
You're right. JJ Watt's
He's
not
gonna be in the
playing. Okay.
studio. But TJ's not playing. We talked about their record. They're like 1-10 when he
Yep.
doesn't play.
Yep.
Josh Allen hasn't been playing great recently. Like I think his completion percentage dropped like 5 to 7%. Touchdown interception ratio is about the same. But they're at home. The weather's crazy, and I'm not a believer in Pittsburgh's ability to create and sustain long drives or create big plays for short drives, big touchdown plays. I don't see the. I know Deontay Johnson had a good one last week. He took a slant, took it to the house, or recently. But Mason Rudolph's numbers last week, I believe it was something like 12 for 14 for 123 yards.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know where you generate because to beat Buffalo, Buffalo got the punt return against Miami. That was the big play. Josh Allen down the sideline to Stephon Diggs throwing off his back foot. Granted, he threw an interception off his back foot earlier, but then he came right back and threw the bomb to Stephon Diggs off his back foot, even though he missed them earlier. I just think Buffalo is going to be in a position to create those opportunities more consistently throughout the 4 quarters. Where I'm not sure Pittsburgh will ever. I don't think Pittsburgh is going to have a single play that looks like it's going to be a big play, like a deep shot,
Mm-hmm.
a deep post route. I just don't see it. I just don't see Rudolph hitting the play action, hitting that back foot,
Mm-hmm.
and driving the ball downfield. Whereas I think Buffalo will make 3 of those kind of throws or plays per quarter. I think
Right.
that he will try to make the 40-yard play happen, even to the detriment of the team. But if Pittsburgh gets the ball back, I don't believe they're gonna threaten Buffalo the other way. So
So did you hear what song got named the best beat ever?
Black and Yellow by
No.
Wiz Khalifa.
No.
I
No.
just figured we're talking about Pittsburgh.
No. I'm setting something up here. I'm setting something up here.
The best
So,
beat
so it
ever.
was yeah, it was Shook Ones.
I
It was
listened to that
chosen.
today.
Yeah, it was chosen as the best beat ever. So Sean McDermott, take your time and win this game. Think it through because the next show we might do might be
Might
about
be
you.
about you.
You know what I'm saying? So if Sean McDermott doesn't win this game,
That was so good. I'm sorry I'm laughing and throwing it off, but that was good.
I
Because
was
I
trying to
literally
set it
listened.
up. I was trying to set it
I,
up.
I listened to Shook Ones like before I took my shot before we started recording. Like that was
Yeah.
I put in 90s hip hop in my Apple Music, and that was the first song. So it's
Yeah.
funny that you went
It
to
just
that.
hit me.
That's
Like
crazy.
I didn't even have that in my notes. Like it literally just happened just now. But but this is the thing. You lose this game after all the momentum that you built to close out the season. Then what's different about Buffalo than has been different than the last 2 years when you were supposed to be Super Bowl contenders, when you were like the only team that should beat Buffalo at this point in the AFC is Baltimore. You beat Miami twice already. Hold up, let me do this. Let me do this. You beat Miami twice. You won at
Okay.
Arrowhead already. So if you play Kansas City again, they're coming to your place.
Okay.
Houston's got a rookie quarterback. Cleveland can't play on the road apparently.
Correct.
So that leaves Baltimore as the only team that you should feel we're up against it, and it's at Baltimore. So you should feel. I'm not talking about us. I'm just talking about as a Buffalo Bill. You should feel that Baltimore.
You
is your
remember the
competition.
locker room. You should look around like the only people we have to worry about is Baltimore because we haven't seen them yet.
Yes, we got to worry about us because our quarterback keep doing dumb shit. But besides that, we just got to look at Baltimore, and this is the thing, right? Now, with that being said, we don't know if Najee Harris is going to play or not. I saw he wasn't practicing, and
You shoot him up. You can't.
and
You
then for
already
the
missed
Browns,
TJ Watt.
and then for the Browns, we don't know if Garrett is going to play, and Amari Cooper's still dealing with the heel. But anyway, I don't think Pittsburgh runs the ball well enough to do what they need to do in this game with the weather. Like, I don't think that Buffalo is going to look at Pittsburgh averaging 5 yards a carry or something like that. You know, Mason
Pittsburgh,
Rudolph.
Buffalo has zero reason to not have 8 dudes in the box
Mason
like
Rudolph
all day.
looked like trash last week. Like, he looked like Kenny Pickett last week. You know, when we were watching the game against Baltimore,
Because
that
all 3 of them are the same. Mason Rudolph, Mitchell Trubisky, and Kenny Pickett all the same
they just
quarterback.
all the same.
They're
Trubisky
just,
just runs a little bit more. You know,
and even that he
but
doesn't run because he tries to throw it, and he's like his throws make no sense. Like the game against New England, I was like, this dude is not an NFL quarterback, and it was
it's
just
very
blowing my mind that he was.
But it's very telling that Kenny Pickett's been healthy for 2 or 3 weeks now, and he's not back in the lineup.
Oh, they done with him.
So when according to Dallas,
Tomlin's last game.
According to Dallas Mike on the hot box, he brought that up today because he feels that Mike Tomlin has been lucky in winning fluke games and all this kind of stuff like that. You know, he sounded like he was having a 2-5 moment, but yeah, I think Buffalo is just the better team. Their defense struggled a little bit after the injuries first started happening, but they still finished top 10 in the league. So, you know, it's going to be a tall task to walk up into Orchard Park and win because what? Because nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So then, you know, shout out to El Residente. Hashtag boycott Peacock.
You know, I don't know why it's not on TV.
Get this football game from behind the paywall. But luckily, since I watched the WWE Network, I got Peacock. But guess what? I'm still not going to watch it on Peacock because hashtag boycott Peacock. So, Mr. Logical,
just to spite them.
The Miami Dolphins coming in off of this 2-game losing streak, going into Arrowhead where there's no receiver to be seen. Who wins?
All right. Shout out to Chris, Miami fan, avid watcher of the show, probably one of our biggest fans. Like,
yes, sir.
Because he hits me up after the video's posted. He'll hit me up with a question. I think about like, man, you watch that far into the show? Because I get it's a long show. Like we're at 1 hour and 22 minutes now, and I get this a long time, and we appreciate everybody for watching.
Well, luckily I put the timestamps in there. You know what I mean? So they know when to go to it.
So he asked me because you recall after I don't know if there's a Miami game or if it was a I think it was the Raiders game, and I was like definitive. Like I don't think Kansas City wins. I think they lose their first playoff game.
Right.
And I was going to sway from that. I remember the conversation we had the other day talking about the speed and Tua not being able to throw in the wind. I'm gonna stick to that take that I had because I haven't. Kansas City hasn't done anything that says
we're back.
We're back, or we made any adjustments. Ever since Kadarius Toney was offsides and Travis Kelce threw in the play, you know, essentially the play of the century that didn't get, you know, that got called back because of offsides. Which I don't know why they didn't just blow it dead when the offensive player is offsides. It's like
right.
Why are you giving the defense a chance to make a play? But that's neither here nor there. I haven't seen much of him. I watched a few of the Chiefs games after that. I don't recall seeing him anywhere. Chris Broussard said on First Things First, he's like, I think they're going to win the AFC West no matter what. He was like, his plan would have been like, I'm going to put Sky Moore and Toney on the field as much as possible and give them every opportunity to build their confidence up in
But there's only one problem now. Sky Moore is on injured reserve.
Well, they didn't use him for weeks. He must have got hurt in the shower. 24 wasn't on the floor, wasn't on the field at all. So maybe he was nursing something, but they didn't do it. They didn't do what Chris Broussard said. Like, I don't remember seeing Kadarius Toney on the field. So, like I said, they didn't do anything different. Kelce was 16 yards away from an 8 straight 1,000-yard season. I think if they're rolling and they're clicking, they get him some of those touch passes that you like Tyreek Hill and Antonio Brown got from Tom Brady when he needed to hit that $500,000 bonus,
Right.
where you just like tap it forward. It's basically a run play, but it's called a pass because you're throwing it forward. I
Right.
think if they're rolling, they put Kelsey in for 4 or 5 of those kind of plays and get him that 16 yards, get him the 8 straight 1,000-yard seasons. But the fact that they were so discombobulated offensively, they were like, you know what? We can't even risk him not being available.
Do the Lakers practice? Like these
They
dudes cannot
do.
shoot at all. Like
They just can't shoot. They
you
couldn't
know,
shoot for 3 years. They haven't been like Rob Pelinka is a what's the boy name? What's the phrase? A charlatan selling snake oil.
well, I was looking at this game, Miami and Kansas City, and I have now learned that is being predicted to be the third coldest game in NFL history.
-30 wind chill.
Yeah, you got the ice bowl, you got the freezer bowl, and I don't know what they're gonna call this one. You know what I'm saying? The meat locker, you know what
I
I'm saying?
imagine that now with the technology, there's probably heaters under the field.
You
I
know.
know it's natural grass, but I can imagine because I don't think they use that stadium for anything else. I imagine that if the field is heated,
Right.
then like my Miami pick is locked in because like I said, I'm picking Miami. But if the field's heated, then yeah, like I feel odd picking against the Chiefs and Mahomes and Andy Reid. I just don't think they got to like. It's like I like Deontay Wilder, but what I got to be honest, he doesn't throw many 3 or 4 punch combinations. He doesn't have a big lower half that generates power when he's tired. It's just all shoulder. So
Well,
you have to look at it like, yo, you don't have all the tools you need to be dominant at the level that you're currently playing. The Chiefs they don't have all the pieces in place that they need to be good in January.
I thought about this because all I've been hearing all week is about how Miami's going to get plowed, so to speak, and buried at Arrowhead, and how Miami has lost their last 10 games under 40 degrees, even though I don't know how many of these players actually played in those games.
Not many.
But what
It's
I
been
do
pretty warm the
know,
last few years.
but what I do know is that Chan is averaging 7.8 yards a carry. He's first in the league in 40-yard runs. He's fourth in the league in 20-yard runs, and I'm sure he missed 4 or 5 games. You know, Mostert should be back. I don't know how effective he'll be, but you're talking about the league leader in rushing touchdowns. You know, Waddle hopefully is back as well. So when I first looked at this game, the first thing I said was Arrowhead. No way, no
No
how.
how.
And then I was like, but they went 4-4 at home. And everybody's banging on the Philadelphia Eagles for starting 10-1, finishing 1-5. Well, Kansas City started 6-1 and finished 5-5 down the stretch.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
people have been highlighting how poorly they've looked. Like
I
people are
don't
kind of like
care.
glazed,
They've been saying
glossing
all
over the
that.
Eagle. Yeah, they
They've been
have.
saying all that. They've been saying
I'm
all
probably
that.
the only person that said they're going to lose their first playoff game.
You know, they Kansas City is second in scoring defense and against the pass. But if it's going to be -30, how much passing you going to do? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. You know, obviously Miami defensively has all the injuries. They went out and got Chris Houston and Bruce Irvin. I don't know if they signed them. I know they brought them in for workouts and all that stuff. I think they signed them though. So
It's time the guys in January. There has to be a rule against that, but
I guess if you're Miami, your thought is Kansas City, why don't you throw the ball anyway so we could drop 8 into coverage? And because one of these two teams can run the football. That team is Miami.
I think Miami can rush for all. I think Miami can rush for all day long, and occasionally blitz.
And I agree. And Kansas City is also 17th against the run And in their last 3 games, they've given up 126.3 rushing yards a game. So I hate to keep doing this, but I'm going to agree with Mr. Logical. I'm taking the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wise thing to do sometimes.
And guess what's going to happen, Chris? You're going to go to Buffalo next week
and beat Buffalo. I don't know what's going on. We'll see what happens.
They ain't going to beat no damn Buffalo. And then we're going to go down to Arlington. Back down to Arlington. I thought it was weird too. They got all the AFC games on Saturday. And then the NFC games are Sunday and Monday. That's just weird, but you know.
That's because the NFL, I remember a line from Concussion, like I remember watching the previews.
Tell the truth.
And he said, you want to take on the NFL, they own a day of the week that used to belong to Jesus. They're just a powerful structure. Like December, the Christmas New Year's, like time frame, the NFL just monopolized it to the max.
Well, you used to have like
and the streaming services and everything. They've taken over, and on top of that, I think they're going to give us a good product still. Well, I think Dallas and Green Bay is going to be a good product.
You used to have your like early AFC game, your NFC game, like it was alternating. Like I don't remember it being all one conference on one day in that way, but you know.
Yeah, I remember it being. So Super Bowl is 6 games. I remember it being 2 AFC games, an NFC game on one day, and then 2 NFC and 1 AFC game the next day. Maybe there's some science to it. Maybe there's some marketing to it. You know, Kevin Durant out here dunking on AD.
But what I do know,
past him.
But what I do know is that Aaron Jones averages 6 yards a carry against the Cowboys.
Green Bay has hamstring hold up.
Yes, that's the question. Green Bay has won 9 out of their last 10 against Dallas.
I saw that stat in the group today. That shocked me. A few of those with Dak on the team.
What shocked me was this is their first time playing out of all the history of the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys. This is their first matchup in the wild card round. They usually meet a little bit later than that.
They've been historically really good teams.
Yeah.
So I think the last Cowboys Green Bay game that I can recall is the one that
Aaron Rodgers
rolling
Mason
left
crossbar.
Mason crossbar, that the pass he threw to Jared Cook.
Yeah.
Is John Wall in the audience? John Wall not in the league? He's sitting in the audience watching Laker game.
I know he got traded. I thought he got traded back to Houston at one point, but yeah, I don't think so.
He's sitting on the left side of the. Look at me messing up. It looked like he was sitting on the left side of the hoop,
being a damn groupie.
But that was the year that Green Bay went down to Atlanta, and Atlanta beat them and ended up in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
that 1-9, one win in the last 10 games against Green Bay for Dallas just seems odd because Dallas has been a good team for 16 years.
Some teams just got much
like from T.O. and Bledsoe and T.O. and Romo and Miles Austin. Like they've never had a bad team. I don't recall. I know they were going 8-8 with Jason Garrett a lot. I just don't recall them being in a situation where
they went 4-12 one year.
But I don't know what that wasn't with Romo.
Maybe it was with
Quincy Carter.
No, I think it was the year that might have been the year that got hurt. Like when he
Nah, I still think they did pretty well.
Was it when he broke his leg? Not last year when he got hurt, but there was another year. Remember,
a couple years ago before.
Yeah, I think they went 4-12 that year.
Okay, but that's without your starting quarterback.
The year they got Micah Parsons.
They were in the top 10.
Yeah. So there you go. Historical facts on Sports Reports is ordered. But Jordan Love comes into this game with 32 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. You know, Dallas, the only undefeated NFL team at home. You know, besides Seattle and Detroit, they beat everybody by double digits. So can the Packers keep this close?
I think it'll be a good game. Um, we were talking about Jordan Love probably in November, saying like, "Oh, I don't know if this is gonna work out," and then all of a sudden he finishes the year top three in total QB like touchdown passes. And the game I watched against Kansas City, I was like, okay, he gets it. He gets it. He gets it. Like I said, I will bring this up every week because I'm a Falcons fan. It was a couple of throws I watched him make that Ritter wouldn't even try. That were
Right.
complete.
Right.
It was one pass that was it was fourth. I think they went from like 4th and 2, 4th and 1, and Rashad Dobbs was running up the seam, and he threw like a Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers fade away shot throw up the
Right.
seam, and he caught it in between like three defenders converging on him. Like he was falling to the ground. He caught it as they were all like getting there. So he caught it, he was on the ground. But that kept the drive going, and ultimately, like, Green Bay won that game. So I think his confidence just went up every single week, which you love to see. I just think Dallas at home is so tough, and what they do well travels. What they do well, the speed they play with on that turf between Michael Parsons, uh,
Well,
Russell, Bland, Gilmore, and then you go offensive side with Dak. Dak playing MVP level. Yes, I think he would get more consideration. I'm trying to see what happened to D'Lo. Ooh, something on the lower leg. Um, ooh, ooh, that looks like a no contact. That's not good. Uh, so what they do offensively with Pollard, um, CD Lamb, who basically came out and said, "Hey, Tyreek, I'm the best wide receiver in the league now. Sit down and hold that real quick." Like I said, Dak playing an MVP level. His record against teams with that was above 500 that middle part of the season, because that was a discussion. Because the MVP, no one really set themselves apart, so they were using a lot of, like, not necessarily a narrative, but they were saying, "Oh, you know what? You didn't do this. You got to drop out." Josh Allen fell. Like I said, I was trying to advocate for him a few weeks back,
right.
but because he had lost, he was the reason his team lost a few games, which is something that I had personally said myself. But like I said, the facts change, so does my opinion. I think it's like Dak not playing well against teams on the road. Same thing happened to Tua. Teams above 500 really, dropped him back. But if you look at his numbers, if you look at the impact, if you look at the fact that he's 8-0 at home, that shows you at least that's a level of consistency and focus that you have to be an MVP. Like, you're holding home court, number 2 seed. I think Green Bay keep it close. I think it'll be a good game. I'm thinking like a 27, 24, 20, like 27, 23, 28,
Oh, that's
23,
real
something like
close.
that. Yeah, like a possession, because I don't think Green Bay is lacking anywhere.
Did you see the spread?
Is the spread 9.5?
No, 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 no.
Yeah,
Seven
like
and a
what, like
half.
7.5? Yeah. So, like I said, I
So you
don't
got
think
Green Bay covering that then.
I got Green Bay covering, because I think they're so young that when all else fails, they might just be able to just make a couple plays off of just youth,
Right.
just somebody getting open, because Jordan Love in his mid 20s rolls out, in one of these young 6'5", 6'3", 6'4", speedy wide receivers just gets open.
Right. I can see
You
that.
know,
I can see that. Yeah. I got it a little bit bigger, like 31-17, but we'll see. Uh
I haven't seen, like, I don't know when the last time we saw Dallas in the playoff as the favorite,
well, I don't know the
and they
last time
perform to that level, because I
I don't
believe,
know
yeah, I just don't believe that. I think they'll play well. I just I know the pressure is on them,
right.
because
That's the problem.
this is the third year in a row that they won 12 games, and it would be like the first time a team goes 3 years in a row winning 12 games and not play in their conference championship.
Well, like this is the first year that Dallas has made the playoffs that I've had expectations for them. Because before the season, I picked them to go to the NFC Championship game, I'm still going to stick with that. But, this is the first time I felt that way, So then Ford Field, which has never hosted a playoff game before, because the last time the Lions had a home playoff game in 1993, it was still the Pontiac Silverdome.
Shout out Barry Sanders.
Shout out Wayne Fonts, said.
The original black coach.
Yeah.
In the art shell.
Rams and Lions. The game of the weekend for me. What you think?
I think it's tough. I'm leaning, and I'm gonna lean all the way. I'm gonna take Detroit.
Okay.
I know a lot of my picks have been short of Miami. I just think Detroit. Everyone was questioning why Dan Campbell went for 2 twice. Like he went for 2 from the 2, and then they got
3 times, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, so he was 3 times, but when he went for it from the 7, it was like people were questioning, like, why would he go for 2? He's like, because he's like, I don't want to play 10 more minutes. I want to lock this down now. I want to show my team, hey, we bought that action. Let's get it. And then Michael Parsons jumps off sides. Another reason I'm kind of like weary of Dallas is like, are you going to do that? Because that cost Kansas City a trip to the to the Super Bowl in that cold game when Tom Brady threw the tip ball, got interception. D Ford was lined up off sides, gave New England a chance. Game kept going back and forth. Long story short.
Yeah, because they got a pick
Tom
on
Brady gets, they got the pick on that. Game's over.
Yeah.
But he's lined up offside. So just a mistake like that, I think, can hurt a team. Detroit is probably going to make a mistake, and I believe Laporta is still listed as out, maybe questionable.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to
play. He had a bone bruise and hyperextended knee and a bone bruise. I don't know. I know young bodies are young bodies, but I don't know if you could bounce back in 6 days and be ready to go for playoff football that quick.
Yeah.
But I just trust the energy of the Detroit Lions. I like the Rams. I like Stafford. I don't know if it's going to be too much for him coming back and bringing this new team in after they've been traded. But I like Dan Campbell. I like what the team. I like how they just kind of rally around him and they rally around his demeanor. And on top of the fact, I mean, like they are the number 3 seed, and they had a chance for the number 2 seed, whereas the Rams had to go on like this hellacious run over the last couple of months of the season. It was impressive, but at certain points of the year, they were looking like they were going to be a mediocre team.
You know what I like? I like the Fugees. I like Lauryn Hill. I like Bob Marley. No woman, no cry. I like that, right? No Laporta, no win. So this is
still the Panay Sewell.
I mean, the same way that you're thinking about Stafford coming into Detroit, maybe some emotions, maybe a slow start. I don't know. Jared Goff might be a little, I don't know what the word is, but trying to get revenge on Sean McVay. So he might be a little juiced too.
Have we ever seen Jared Goff show any external emotion?
Have we ever seen Jared Goff play against the coach that got rid of him?
No, but just like realistically. Like
I'm being realistic.
Press conference, like you could think about Jalen Hurts, right? Because we're going to talk about him. You could think about a moment at the press conference where it looked like he was like somber. You could think about Tom Brady slamming the tablets, Cam Newton with a towel on his head, Andrew Luck retiring abruptly. Like a lot of these guys have shown us wide range of emotions. Matt Ryan get fucking set. Like, like I haven't seen anything from Jared Goff.
Kicker.
Peyton Manning yelling at Jeff Saturday, how about you just call the plays? Like, so I haven't seen any of that with Jared Goff. I don't know if anything gets to him. And they say that about him. Like, he has a real, like, this real California personality. I don't think the McVay thing is going to get to him at all.
Well, we're going to see. We definitely going to see.
I don't think it'll affect his play. If he plays well or not, I don't think that's a factor in it.
I think everybody in life even Mr. Logical, the
True.
rational, the even keel, there's something that gets under Mr. Logical's skin and makes Mr. Logical not be so logical, even if it's just for a moment. Saying how's that for some, psycho relationship analogy, you know. But Kyron Williams, impressive, third in the league in
True.
rushing, just ahead of James Cook, even though he missed some games. Detroit is 29th against the pass, but second against the rush. So here's strength versus strength. Who's going to win? The Rams 12th against the run and 25th against the pass. So both teams should be able to throw at each other. We should have ourselves an old school shootout in the dome. One of the few games this weekend not affected by weather.
35-30 Detroit.
You know, um, Jared Goff, finished third in passing touchdowns. Matt Stafford had himself, we talked about it, an MVP like year. He doesn't have the numbers, like he's not up there with Dak and them in touchdowns, but for what he did for this team. But there's one problem. So Detroit got CJ back, CJ Gardner Johnson. They got him back. But Cooper Cup and, of course, Mr. Nakua
Cool.
expect a lot of that. I'm taking the Rams.
Well, I think is that our first.
That's our
Did you
first
take
one.
KC? Okay, so
No,
you
I
took
took
Miami as
Miami.
well.
Yeah. That's our first
Okay,
one.
okay.
I'm taking Detroit. And then
Are
finally,
you're taking the Rams? You said.
I'm saying the Rams. Yeah, I'm taking the Rams.
Okay.
And then finally, saying finally, the Eagles have come back to Tampa. So this is a rematch from earlier this season. Philadelphia with the 25-11 win early in the season when they were going on their 10-1 rough shot over the league.
Correct.
Uh, it hasn't been so great lately, but
It's
are
been
you willing to say that the wheels
living
have
up
completely
here.
fallen off? Yeah.
Living up here, you hear it. Like sometimes I get my car and the Apple Play won't connect, and it just automatic like it's all like a sports radio. Just I don't know why, but I've heard a few like Philly fans kind of just be perturbed with it. Talking to Philly fans because Matt, my son plays sports, so it's like a lot of Philly fans right here. We'll talk about them. There's a lot of Giants fans too. So we just
Right.
have these conversations, and just in general, I think the Eagles just have a lot of fans. They've been a good team. They've always had like great looking jerseys. And I think
Yeah.
even people who aren't from this area really talk about it. My the thing that I don't understand is that they didn't lose major pieces to their 10-1 team
Uh-huh.
that start off this year. Even
Uh-huh.
if you look at their Super Bowl team, it's like you lost some auxiliary pieces. Guys got money otherwhere. CJ, Gardner Johnson got some money other places. Um, we talked about their secondary just not being able to handle the pass, but they get
Right.
less sacks. And maybe is it? I know the front end and the back end work together hand in hand. Where if you can cover for 3 seconds and make the quarterback come off his first and second read, then maybe a guy like Hassan Reddick, Graham, Fletcher Cox, Jalen Carter, Jordan, like some of these guys can like get through. But they were getting less sacks because the deep like wide receivers are just open. I mean, they gave up
Right.
35 points to Arizona. Arizona essentially, when they traded for Josh Dobbs the week before the season started, it looked like they were tanking. It looked like they were trying to get the number one pick. And then all of a sudden they just started beating like they beat Dallas. They beat Philly. Obviously, they beat Atlanta. They still lost a lot of games. They weren't like a top tier team. But it seemed like every week a different leader of the team was telling the media directly, we're not focused. We need to get back to basics. We need more buy in. And this is like week 12, 13, 14. This is like after multiple weeks of like inadequate and subpar and substandard play. How is it that a different captain every week is still going to the media saying guys aren't focused? I haven't really heard anything definitive from Sirianni, But once again, I just feel like if Sirianni had the temperament of Jalen Hurts, I would trust that the team could turn it around. But they don't. And Jalen Hurts and Kelsey, and you guys like Lane Johnson, some of these leaders, Fletcher Cox, it just feels as if their impact on the game should be more, especially with the talent level that they have. Like I said, they didn't lose. They actually added Jalen Carter to the defensive line. They should have been better. He was regarded as the best player in the draft, and they got him at, I believe, 10.
Something like that. Yeah.
With the Miami deals, Miami trades, and everything else. So I just think that they were primed to be a better team, and the 11 wins is probably deceiving. It's probably along the lines of when Pittsburgh started 11-0 a couple years back, and then Baker Mayfield and Cleveland beat them in the playoffs. It's kind of like a fool's gold. So I say all that to say this: I'm gonna take Tampa Bay just because I'm not sure if everybody on the Eagles wants to play a game after this weekend.
I hear everything you said. It makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's a gift.
But sports don't make sense. You know what I'm saying? Philadelphia is the better collection of players. Baker Mayfield's got these hurt ribs and ankle. Obviously, Jalen Hurts has a mangled finger.
Keep going. I got to grab somebody right back.
AJ Brown has the knee injury and all that. Hopefully he can play. When I look at this, back when we were talking about college football, we always talk about, but you ain't play nobody. Like, yeah, they're 9-3, but they ain't play nobody. So when I look back at Tampa Bay during this season, I'm struggling to find the wins that impress me. So when I look at this, they beat Kirk Cousins in week 1. Minnesota, full strength and everything, so you can't take that from them. Week 2, they beat the Bears, who were not necessarily the Bears yet. They lost the Monday night game to Philly that we were just talking about. They beat the Saints, went on their bye. Lost by 14 to Detroit, lost at Atlanta, lost at Buffalo, lost at the Texans. So for those of you counting at home, that's 4 straight losses. They beat Tennessee, lost to the 49ers, lost to the Colts, beat the Panthers, beat the Falcons, beat the Packers, beat the beat-up Trevor Lawrence Jaguars, and lost by 10 to the Saints at home. And then they scored 9 points in a win over Carolina. So I'm not saying this team that is better than Philadelphia outside of what you said, like as far as
right.
the mental stuff and all of that. Now, I would like to think, and obviously this is just guessing and conjecture on my part, I think if you're Nick Sirianni, me and you had a conversation. We talked about, is Philly bored? I'm not going to say they were bored. But what I will say if I'm Nick Sirianni is, look, we're in January now. Everything that happened before today doesn't matter. Today's a new day. We're the better team. We went to the Super Bowl last year. Are you that team or are you not?
Yeah, I don't think that's enough though.
It might not be.
I look at it like this. We talked about that, like we talked about the growth of Jordan Love from November when everyone was ready to bench him and say, man, they're really going to miss Aaron. Right. And then he turned it around. Miami and Philly were number 1 AFC, NFC, and they both end up not winning their division, end up being 5 seeds to a team that kind of was on their heels all year, and the other team got hot. But with Miami, I think it can be fixed schematically. I think Miami can just go back to the drawing board, make an adjustment here, because if you think about some of their losses, we talked about the fumble that I felt should have been like for a progress stop with Tyreek in Germany against Kansas City, and then the punt return where the guy got hurt on the punt return. So the gap that he was in, he like hurt his knee or something and fell. So he would have been in that gap to make the tackle on Hardy. But when he fell down, he knocked another guy out of his lane too.
Right.
So he fell down. So he was, of no use to the team. And then he knocked another guy out of the play. So you got two guys, one hole, pause. And so, Hardy, and of course it's Hardy, he runs right to the end zone. But I think Miami can fix that schematically. What Philly has been talking about, it's been mental and coordination and just being a good teammate and things of that nature for weeks and weeks and weeks. So if we are acknowledging that we have a focusing issue, we have an issue with people being prepared, we have an issue with people buying in. Those are all the same catchphrases for multiple weeks. It's the same thing. I think Miami can go out there and say, hey, let's get these kind of passes off. Let's get these kind of runs. Let's stay out of 3rd and 7. Let's stay out of this. And we can win the game. I'm not sure what Philly can say because they gave up a bunch of points to Buffalo.
Philly could say Tampa Bay can't run the damn ball.
But Philly can't defend the pass.
And can this dude with bruised ribs get passes down the field? And can we not
enough Toradol at legal, like, you take medicine like every 4 hours. You give it to him an hour before kickoff. You give it to him again at halftime. And then maybe you sneak a little bit in this Gatorade or whatever you can give him.
I think this is Custard's last stand, and then they go to Dallas next week and get destroyed.
Yeah, like I said, it's not that I believe in Tampa Bay.
Right, you just don't believe in Philly.
I just don't believe in Philly.
Right.
I don't believe.
And it makes sense. Like I said, it makes sense.
Like I said, I'll give you an example, like we talked about in a little pre-meeting. And I'm not here to peg AJ Brown as like some diva, but in a situation where pause, it's 3rd and 7. We'll say 8 minutes in the first quarter. Maybe they got a possession and had to punt. This is their second possession, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. He runs his route. He's open. Jalen comes off of him early, goes to Dallas Goedert. It's incomplete. Now they're punting. On the way to the sideline, the conversation could be, Jalen, hold that for another half a second. They're playing, outside leverage on me. Hold the safety in the middle of the field. I'm going to be able to break. Whatever the case may be, you can have that dialogue back and forth instead of just screaming, I'm open, slamming your helmet. So if he doesn't get the ball and they got a punt and the score is 3-0, and it's tight and it's like, we need to make a play because they all know they've been playing subpar football for the last month and a half. Right. You start to press. You start to be like, yo, you've been missing me for the last 3 weeks. I'm wide open. And Nick Sirianni comes over, and I'm not sure if he has a temperament to just Tony Dungy the situation.
Because he's immature.
I think he's gasoline on the fire situation.
I think that they're just going to run the ball down Tampa's through.
Now, Vince, that's an easy stop. Unless you're just getting a bunch of tush pushers. Like if you're getting a bunch of 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2s, and okay, I'll give you that. But I'm just not sure that teams that have $255 million, $260 million quarterbacks revert back to running the ball in the playoffs.
Well, he's got a mangled finger, so they might have to for a game.
It'll be all right to put Mariota in.
But no, don't do that because if they do that, I am picking Tampa. So with that being said, Mr. Logical, we have reached the end of the show. But before we get out of here, we got to do it. Who you got in the Super Bowl?
Already, I didn't even get to my picks yet. I don't know if it's going to work.
That was it.
The Super Bowl?
Yeah, you got to make a prediction.
Man, let me get this next week off first. We still got 14 teams, and that's half the league.
You made a Super Bowl pick before the season even started.
All right, Baltimore and San Francisco.
All right, I'm going with San Francisco. And guess who?
Miami.
No.
Buffalo.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Come on, man. You got Buffalo and San Francisco in the Super Bowl.
But the 49ers will win the Super Bowl.
Mr. Irrelevant. All they're going to talk about, he's the lowest draft pick to ever win Super Bowl since Tom Brady. Like,
yeah.
You're going to hear that 1,100 times.
It sucks because, preseason I had Philly and Cincinnati, and, obviously Joe Burrow's hurt, and, Philly is something. They're Philadelphia. They're not Philly. But
I
Joe.
had Kansas City and Atlanta, so
yeah.
We all make mistakes.
He is the one and only, soon to be world famous, Mr. Logical. I am 2-5. We are Sports Reports' Order. Keep your eye out. We'll be back next week. We're going to recap these playoff games. We're going to get y'all set up for something else. Maybe we throw some basketball in there for you. You know what I'm saying? Mr. Logical has made it known to me that he's planning on entering the hot box at some point soon.
Absolutely. I'm getting in there. I only got one class this semester, so I might have the time. I'm going to make the time for it.
So keep your eye out for that. I might be on the hot box tomorrow. We'll see. You know what I'm saying? But, Joe, we love you, America. Enjoy the weekend. Playoff football. There ain't much like it. Peace.